Good day. Welcome to Oral Communication in Context, Week 2 Communication Models. I am Mr. Nelpern Pisambalod and I am your teacher for this course. For this week, let us find out what students need to know. This module was designed and written with you in mind. It is here to help you master the different models of communication. It will lead you to understanding how communication works among people to foster mutual understanding and good relationship. The scope of this module permits it to be used in many different learning situations. The language used recognizes the diverse vocabulary level of students. The lessons are arranged to follow the standard sequence of the course, but the order in which you read them can be changed to correspond with the textbook you are now using. To continue on what students need to know, this module consists of one lesson, communication models. After going through this module, you are expected to differentiate the various models of communication, explain the process of communication through the elements involved, and recognize the importance of the models in understanding the communication process as applied in everyday life. What's in? Lesson 2, communication models. Look at the photo. You are perfectly correct. You have there a sender and a receiver, and they're making use of cell phones as their chosen channel. And you have their what? Yes, seem to be barrier. So let's figure out how is that photo related to our lesson for this week. Communicating with others takes us to a new experience. We are either the ones starting the conversation process or the ones receiving it. As the exchange of information progresses, both the source and the recipient go through favorable or unfavorable experiences. The two or more individuals involved may end up satisfied or discontented with the result. At some random instances, conflicts may incidentally arise, but still, the end goal of communication is always for building better human relationships. Last time, we talked about the functions, nature, and process of communication. Let us recall some key terms that you encountered from the previous lesson. But of course, what is being meant by this slide is that we do communicate for us to widen our relationship or to make our relationship with others that strong. Okay? And of course, it can be made possible if we are fully aware of the basic terms that women know when it comes to communicating with people. Let us check if you have really learned something from our last week's lesson. Let's find out if you can still recall some of the technical terms that we studied. Let's have this exercise. Directions. Complete the paragraph below by choosing the correct word from the word pool. Write your answer on separate sheet of paper. And of course, you will be answering it in your Google Classroom, okay? So we have the following words in the word pool: behavior, communication, decoding, interact, message, multibates, nonverbal, receiver, sender, and written. Let us proceed to the given exercise. So we have here a paragraph, but as you can notice, there are blanks that are needed to be filled with words coming from the word pool. So let's go on. I do want you to listen intently so that you will hear from me what are the answers on those blanks. Okay? So let's have number one. Blank is a process which follows a certain procedure. Okay, you got it correctly. That's communication. Communication occurs between two or more people. The blank or source of the information and the blank. So we have the sender and the receiver. It can be articulated through blank or spoken words. So what's the antonym of spoken words? Of course, that's written. Written or spoken words. It can also be expressed through gestures, facial expressions, or actions which are blank. So how do we call them? Of course, the nonverbal, where words are not needed to understand what one means. Number six, blank is the process of interpreting the encoded blank of the source by the receiver. Decoded. Okay? So decoding. Decoding is the process of interpreting the encoded message of the source by the receiver. Okay. So communication also functions to control blank. Of course, that is behavior. It functions to control behavior. It blank, or encourages people to live better and allows individual to blank with others. Okay. It what? What's the answer? It motivates or encourages people to live better and allow individuals to what? To interact with others. Okay, those are the answers for this exercise. What is new? How often do you and your family eat all together? What do you normally talk about? Read the anecdote and extract the different communication situations that you will find in the story. So maybe you are reviewing in your memory how often do you eat with your family? Do you constantly do it or you seldom do it? So accordingly, it's always good to eat with your family members and talk about the things that you must share with them. Okay? So don't forget it before we go on reading the selection. Before reading the anecdote, The Glitch by Divina P. Hamming, stare at the photo. What can you see in it? You have there five people, and it seems that the three of them are the children of the mother and father who are also in the photo. And they seem to be talking with one another, and they seem to be sharing thoughts with each other. But the father, look at Kim, stare at Kim, notice the details. He seems to be sad. And look at the mother. She seems to be encouraging or motivating the father regarding the problem that he is facing, while the children, headed by the eldest, seems to be cheering the father. Okay, so let us find out how are the details in the photo related to the text, the glitch. Okay, let's go on. Let us have the reading of the text, The Glitch by Divina P. Mamming. The La Cruz family came together for breakfast. Each had his own story to tell about his experience for the week. This is the usual scenario every Sunday morning. Good morning, kids! Greeted the mother, who had just finished setting the table for five. Tonio and Maria could not wait to reach for their chairs with a big grin on their faces as they said, Good morning, Nanay! Griselda walked out from her room, still sleepy, her hair unkempt, her sleepwear on, but appeared equally thrilled as her siblings shared the table with their mother. Nanay, I can smell the aroma of your best delicacy, adobo, she remarked. Yeah, I know. It is the favorite of the family, so adobo is what I prepared today. She answered. Griselda replied, I can't wait to taste it. Mang Cardo, the man of the family, is a clerk in one of the rural banks in town. He was talking to somebody over the phone. His voice echoed excitement, but later on, his positive mood gradually vanished. As he turned towards the table, he shrugged his shoulders for disappointment. Let's eat! Mother exclaimed, wanting to turn the situation around, but everybody seemed to have been overwhelmed by their father's silence. It was the first time they saw him in a really low spirit. What happened? At last, the wife asked. I'm gonna lose my job, he said with a croaky voice. But why? Allington was surprised, and so were the children. She quickly walked towards him and patted his shoulder. It's okay. You can still find another job, she said, offering him a seat. The children also let their father feel their support as they smilingly uttered, Tatay, don't worry, we are here to help. Yes, we will assist Nana in selling fish in the market after school hours, Tonya said. Maybe we can add vegetables to sell too, for additional income, Maria added. Griselda, on the other hand, volunteered to do the home chores. Thank you, my dear children, was all Aling could say. Cardo was moved by his family's gesture. He was not expecting for such an all-out support. He felt good about it. He started asking his kids about their activities in school and how they fared in their subjects. Each of them excitedly told his own story. Griselda declared, I get highest score in math, so my teacher rewarded me with a bar of chocolate. Tonio then mentioned about their project in science, which could eliminate food smell, and everyone poked fun at it. They asked him whether they could try the product to see if it would really work. Maria spoke about their field trip to the town's historical heritage and talked about what she learned from it. Exchanges of stories persisted until someone gave Cardo a ring. The ringing lasted for some seconds, and finally, he stood up to answer the call. As he returned to the table, he was smiling. He was informed that the retrenchment was not for him. It was a mistake. Now, the glitch is fixed, and he is to report to work the next day again. All of them could not contain their happiness, and so they sat down again to eat all together. We will go to the church after breakfast, as usual. Monk Carter sighed with relief. Let us find out if you really understood the story by answering the following questions. Number one, what are the different communication instances in the story? The first possible answer could be when the mother said good morning to her children and the children answered back. The second one could be when Griselda said that she could smell the aroma of the delicacy cooked by her mother, and the mother replied to her remark. Also, you have there when the mother asked the father what happened, and the father answered back, and you've tried to figure out what are the other communication instances in the story. Those are examples so that you will be guided on doing it. Number two, how did each communication scenario develop? The communication scenario developed by having the sender of the message. Yeah, there's someone who formulated the or who generated the idea and voice it out, and of course you have the what the reply given or the feedback given by the receiver of the message, just like the good morning kids, then good morning nanay. Okay, the number three, did a conflict arise in the story? What kind of conflict is it? You have their conflict, you have their you have their what the conflict when the father all of a sudden became sad because he thought that he was one of those who will be losing jobs. Okay, so what kind of conflict is it? That is what that is external conflict beyond the control of the father. Did it affect the communication process? Yes. Na at first, it affected the communication process, but thanks to the mother, who's very witty enough to make way on opening again a communication for all of them. Then, how did the rest of the family members react to it? They reacted positively. Okay, the number four, how can we establish a good communication? We can always establish a good communication by always being sensible to the feelings, attitude of the person whom you're talking to. That's one, okay? So always consider the emotion of the person whom you're talking to. It's badly needed, okay? And of course, reply according to the message being given by the speaker. Just like good morning, then you reply good morning also, is it? Okay. The number five, what is the importance of communication in our daily life? Of course, uh, communication is very important in our daily life in the sense that through communication, we can always voice out our feelings, our emotions to people around us. Wherein, as we voice out this emotion, then they can always give feedback that will make us feel better. That's one of the importance of communication. Okay? And the other importance of communication already mentioned in the first week discussion. So you just go back to our slides or to the discussion that we had. But for this text, no, the communication, the importance of communication here is simple. It what? It helps heal feelings, or it helps to what? To make someone feel better. Mm-hmm. Okay? It appeals to the emotions, or it supports someone who's feeling bad, making him or her feel better through a certain communication that will occur. Okay? So that would be all. What is it? Imagine your life and the world you live in without proper communication procedure. Would there be order or chaos? Would there be understanding or disagreement? Communication plays a crucial role in human life. It facilitates the sending and receiving of knowledge and information. It allows people to develop various kinds of social relationships. It gives an avenue for people to express their ideas, thoughts, feelings, and insights. Without it, societies will be restrained from developing and progressing. With all the advancement in technology, communication nowadays has changed dramatically, adapting to the 21st century way of life. Look at the representations below. They will help you understand the basic elements of communication. See how they operate and interact as communication progresses. This slide simply tells us how important for people to learn how to communicate good, better, or best. So, how are you going to make yourself good when it comes to communication? Of course, It will be by means of knowing models of communication. So this slide leads us to knowing more models of communication so that we will be guided on how we can communicate with people in a very good manner. Okay, so let's continue. Models of communication process. Letter A, linear communication. Have you talked to somebody but did not get any reaction from Kim at all? Have you experienced sending a message without receiving any feedback? This is linear communication. Linear communication is one way focusing on the transmission of a message to a receiver who never responds or has no way of responding to the information conveyed. For instance, a competition organizer is presenting the contest mechanics. The message is final and cannot be contented at all. It could be the president giving his State of the Nation address on the national television, or a student who reads a poem or tells a story in front of an audience in a school program. Other examples include sending an email, reading a blog, or even the traditional way of having letters sent. As from the name itself, linear communication, you have just a line there from the sender going to the receiver. You have the sender, message, then channel, then receiver. But there's no chance for the message to go back. So actually, the linear communication model is kind of similar with the Aristotle model of communication. For in Aristotle model of communication, there's no chance also for the receiver to give feedback. But the receiver have has the effect, the so-called effect, because in Aristotle model of communication, it has five elements. You have the speaker, the speech, occasion, audience, and effect. So in Aristotle model of communication, you have there the occasion. But here, as said in the examples, there could be an occasion too. Okay, so, but again, yeah, but there's no effect there. That's the difference between linear communication and Aristotle model of communication. Okay, so later on, I'll discuss to you what are the different elements included in the linear communication. So, what I'm saying here is that it is kind of similar to Aristotle model of communication. So, I'm mentioning the Aristotle model communication. Okay. So it's kind of linear also. No, you have there the message from the speaker going to the receiver, and the receiver will have there the effect, but there's no chance for the receiver to return or give feedback to whatever he or she had heard from the speaker. Okay, let's continue. Now, let us take a look on a Shannon-Weaver model of communication. Why Shannon-Weaver model of communication? Because it depicts communication as a linear or one-way process of communication. So, it has five main elements, namely source, transmitter, channel, receiver, and destination. Although you have the other minor elements, the message, of course, signal, then receiver's signal, noise, then message, okay? So those are other minor elements in the Shannon-Weaver model of communication, but again, focus on the five elements: source, transmitter, channel, receiver, and destination. So later, I'll explain it to you in the next slide. Let us know more about Shannon-Weaver model of communication. An example of linear type of communication is the Shannon-Weaver model, 1949. It is also considered as the mother of all communication models. Remember that, mother of all communication models. It is a one-way process starting from a source, so the one who's producing a message, then passing through a channel, the signal adapted for the transmission, which may at times be interrupted by noise. Of course, noise is there, or a barrier in the communication, then to a receiver, decoder of message from the signal, then the process stops after the message has arrived at its destination. So that's the thing. That's why it is called linear communication, because you have there the message coming from the speaker going to the receiver, then with the receiver has no chance of providing or answering back or making the speaker know what's the effect of the message to him or her. Okay? So again, The Shannon-Weaver model of communication is known as the mother of all communication models. The Shannon-Weaver depicts communication as a linear or one-way process consisting of five elements. So the source, producer of message, transmitter, encoder of message into signals, channel, signals adapted for transmissions, a receiver, decoder of message from signal, and a destination. This model, however, has been criticized for missing one essential element in the communication process, and that is feedback. Okay? So without feedback, the speaker will not know whether the receiver understands the message or not. That's why the Shannon-Weaver model of communication has been highly criticized for not having the so-called feedback. Okay? Because if it has feedback, then it will no longer be a linear type of communication. Okay? So remember it. Linear type of communication, the example for it is the Shannon-Weaver model of communication. Let us have the second model of communication, the interactive model of communication. When was the last time someone surprised you? How did you react? Who was the last person whom you praised for a job well done? What response did you get? What is the significance of getting a response or reaction from the person to whom you address your statement? Interactive approach is a two-way communication process where a response is given after a message is sent. The recipient of the action intentionally or unintentionally gives a feedback associated with information received. Let us extract Griselda and her mother's dialogue from the story. Griselda: Nanay, I can smell the aroma of your best delicacy, adobo. Aling Tere: Yeah, I know. It is the favorite of the family, so adobo is what I prepared today. Griselda: I can't wait to taste it. Aling Tere's response to Griselda's statement proves that she decodes the intended meaning of the idea passed on to her. That is what we call feedback. See, feedback makes a difference. If the mother did not respond to the statement of her daughter, the latter would not know whether her mother understands what she said. The exchange of ideas or information verifies that both parties understand the message. Take a look at the next model, okay? But before we continue looking at the next model, the second model of communication is called interactive because unlike the linear model of communication or the Shannon-Weaver model of communication, this one, the receiver of the message has the chance to provide feedback, just like in the conversation between Criselda and Aling Tere, wherein after Criselda commented about the aroma of the delicacy of the adobo, then Aling Tere provided a feedback which resulted again for Criselda to reply. Okay? And another good thing about the interactive model of communication is that the feedback being given by the receiver or by the sender, then receiver, then sender again, has something to do, of course, with the context of the communication and the field of experience. That's why you have the I can smell the aroma of your best delicacy adobo. So meaning to say, it's not the first time that Criselda smelled that aroma of delicacy adobo. Then look at Aling Teres' reply. I know it is the favorite of the family. So meaning to say, she has been cooking the same food for the family. Okay? But Criselda, again, now appreciating the mother's statement, then she said there, I can't wait to taste it. Okay? So the more we will know about interactive model of communication as we proceed to the next model of communication or to the illustration of this model of communication, interactive model of communication. Okay. We are still on models of communication. The second model is the interactive model of communication, and the best representation of it is the Schramm model. So look at the Schramm model. So 1954 modified the Shannon-Weaver model. What has Schramm added to the Shannon-Weaver model? Is the new model more comprehensive? Yes. Why it is more comprehensive? Because it is different from the linear model of communication. As you can see in the illustration, you have their what? The sender, then encoder, then signal, decoder, receiver. Okay? Decoding, encoding. Then you have their what? Encoding, decoding, then encoding, decoding. So then you have there the encoding, message, decoding, interpretation, encoding, then feedback or message, then decoding again. So it is interactive. So what's missing in the diagram, in the illustration? You have their build up experience. When is the communication going to be that interactive? If the two persons, or if the speaker and receiver are talking about the same thing. So what do I mean they're the same thing? They are referring to the same the same the same topic, because they are both aware of the said topic. Okay, that's why build up experience is included in the SRAM model of communication. Okay, so interpretation, you have there the speaker, then encoding, then you have there the message being sent to the receiver. Then the receiver will decode the message. Then the receiver will have interpretation of it. Then will encode the message. Then will provide feedback or message. Then send it to the formerly speaker, now receiver. Okay. Then you have there what? Circulation of ideas, or you have their conversation, and the conversation becomes interactive because they can relate to one another because of the so-called field of experience, wherein maybe that topic being talked about has been experienced by the both of them. That's why they have an interactive talk or conversation about it. Okay, let's go on. For better understanding of the Schramm model, you listen again to this discussion. Schramm, 1954, visualized the process of communication as an exchange of thoughts and ideas. Feedback was added to the Shannon-Weber model. The recipient of the message decodes it and creates a feedback based on his understanding of the information sent, and vice versa. The figure identifies the six elements of communication, which are the sender, the message sent, the receiver, and the feedback provided by the receiver and sent back as response to the sender, and the processes of encoding and decoding. Remember, information may become useless if it's not conveyed properly to others. Thus, the process of encoding and decoding are the key components of this model, including feedback. Encoding is when an idea or information is translated into words and expressed to others. Decoding is when this idea or information is understood and interpreted by the receiver. Hence, the receiver must be able to send feedback to the sender in order to complete the process. Otherwise, the communication transaction fails. Schramm model, which is a two-way communication model, revolves around these principles. The process goes on starting from the sender source, who encodes the message transmitted to the receiver, which he interprets, decodes a message feedback to be sent back to the source, who in turn decodes and interprets the information sent. And again, also in the SHA model, as I mentioned earlier, you have there the field of experience. So that field of experience makes the conversation more interactive because they can relate to one another. Okay? And as you can notice also, in the SHA model, you have there the noise. The same is true with linear model communication, or the Shannon-Weber model of communication. Why is that so? Because we should always be reminded that in any communication, there could be noise or a barrier, and we, as the main players in the conversation, must always know how to adjust ourselves. Okay? So let's continue. We are now on the third communication model. It is called transactional model. Communication is dynamic. Whenever we say dynamic, it's active. It has a complex nature. It takes place among individuals at any given time with any given subject. However, there are tendencies that barriers would interfere, which may create a sudden impact and change in the processing of information. In a classroom setting, for example, you are being grouped into five or six members for an activity. Your task is to give an opinion or a reaction to the closure of the biggest television network in the Philippines. Each of you expresses your thoughts regarding the matter. While having the activity, you also heard the junior high school graders having their dance practice for the upcoming event. That noise did not interrupt your discussion as you give your own views. This situation is an example of a transactional approach. The communicator, source, encodes the message and transmits it through a channel. The message transmitted by affected by the noise barrier. The receiver, recipient of the message, decodes, processes, and filters the message for understanding, and is now ready to give its own feedback to the sender. So transactional model, although you have the inclusion of feedback, that uh, that makes it different from a linear model of communication. Also, not having the field of experience, which is present in the SRAM model. So this one, it highlights the so-called noise between the speaker and the receiver. But regardless the noise, as you heard from the example, still you have the transmission of the message. Na making the receiver of the message being interrupted by the noise or that barrier, noise rather, uh, still can be able to give feedback. That's why it's transactional. Okay? So let's go on. Let's have a closer look on a transactional model illustration. Look at it. You have the noise, noise, then communicator sends and receives, responds and decodes, feedback channel, message, feedback channel, decodes and responds, communicator sends and receives, then noise, noise, noise. Uh, as what I said earlier and what you have heard earlier, you have the speaker who's sending a message to the receiver. Then as the sender sends message, there's a possibility that there's noise or there's barrier. But regardless the presence of this noise or barrier, the receiver will make effort to fully understand the message that was sent to him or her. Then after encoding and decoding it, the receiver will be providing his or her feedback and will be sent to the to the speaker earlier. Also, in the manner of or in the process of giving the feedback, there's possibility that there's again barrier that will be interrupting the the forwarding of message coming from the receiver to the speaker. But again, the speaker who is now receiver will try his best uh, to encode and decode the feedback given by the formerly receiver then became speaker. Then he will or she will provide again feedback after decoding the message that was received. That's why it becomes transactional. The transaction is not being hindered but even by certain barriers, just like noise. Okay, that's why it's transactional model wherein you have the transaction going on. Okay, the conversation just keeps on going with the message being understood. Okay, let's go on. For best understanding of the third communication model, the transactional model, have this in mind. The transactional model shows a circular process of interaction between the persons involved in the communication, with each one actively participating and sharing ideas with one another. They are the communicators actively exchanging information and reaction. Feedback is given freely and deliberately to one another or to all members participating in the communication transaction. The sender and the receiver may simultaneously exchange roles as communicators. Since the communication is deemed dynamic and progressive, the topic may also change from time to time. In this concept, the noise or barrier to communication is also taken into consideration, for it may directly or indirectly affect the smooth flow of communication. In the event that the message was not clearly conveyed due to the barrier, the communication continues in order to clarify the intended meaning of the sender. When the transmission is cut along the way due to the barrier, the communicators work collaboratively to understand each other. Now, the sender becomes a receiver of feedback, the response from the receiver, and the receiver also acts as sender, providing information in response to the message conveyed to him. In this way, the communication is made more effective and complete. So, meaning to say, in the transactional model, even though the barriers really hindered the speaker and sender to understand each other for their communication to go on, still they will make way to understand one another so that the communication will continue and for the transaction not to stop. regardless the changing of topics, regardless the presence of barriers, just like noise, still these two or the communicators, the interlocutors, the speaker, receiver, speaker will just go on exerting effort, understanding one another, and it's up to them if they will stop talking or if it's done already for them to communicate with one another. But still, for as long as they are exchanging ideas, they are comprehending one another and keeps on providing feedback, we have there the transaction going on. So that's under transactional model. Okay. What's more, general directions: perform the activities below to better understand the concept of communication and how it works. Follow the indicated directions for each activity. Directions. In the Venn diagram below, show the similarities and differences of three communication models. So you will accomplish this in your Google Classroom. Check for the Google Form link. Then for you, which model is most effective? Why? So, of course, now here it depends on what situation you are in or in what context you are in. Is it? It depends on your purpose. So why are you communicating? If you intend to just deliver a message, then of course go on for the linear communication. You want to close a deal, then the transactional model. Then if you just want to have fun or relaxing moments with your friends, then proceed with the SRAM model or the interactive model of communication. So it always depends on the context or of the purpose why you are communicating. Okay? So let's continue. Still under what's more, directions, identify the elements that constitute the communication process by answering the crossword puzzle there. Write your answer on a separate sheet of paper. Of course, you deal with this in your Google Classroom. Check the Google Form link. So across the reaction or response provided by the receiver of the information, the recipient of the message sent, the source of the information or message, the information or idea conveyed, the factor affecting the communication flow. Okay, continuing with the task directions, read the given situation and fill in the grid below by identifying the elements of communication. So Rosa instructs her little brother to water the plants in their garden. However, she did not notice that her brother was wearing headphones. When she gave instructions, she learned too late that her brother did not do what she told him. So the source, we have the Rosa. The message is for her brother to water the plants. The receiver, the brother. Barrier, you have there the noise coming from the headphones. Okay, but in the next two examples, you will be accomplishing them. Okay. Okay, we'll just continue. I already gave example on how are you going to deal with this activity. This is the third situation. So again, all you have to do is to identify the elements of communication present in the given situation. Okay, so source, channel, barrier, if any. Continuing with the learning task, directions, write a response to each of the following dialogue prompts to complete the communication process. For this slide and the next slide, you will be doing the same. All you have to do is to provide a response to the given situation or to the dialogue prompts provided. At this point, I would like you to review your learnings about communication. Answer the following questions under what I have learned. So, what are the different communication models? What sets each apart from the other? Why is communication an important part of life? When is communication process successful? So, hopefully, you can answer those four questions perfectly. What I can do, call a friend over a phone or via free media platforms such as Messenger, note down the conversation process, identify what communication model is used, illustrate how the communication happens, interview your family members, list down the things that you want to ask to them, you may record your conversation, draw a diagram of the conversation and analyze how the communication takes place. Then the third task, listen to a radio drama or watch a teleserye on a television. Note down how the communication transpires, identify the different elements that are present in the communication process, and illustrate it. For this section, I'm giving you time to accomplish this. You don't have uh, to to do this at this hour or at this time or during this day. For the submission of this task can be done next meeting. Okay? See assessment in the Google form link. So numbers 1 to 15, they are very, very easy. Additional activities. Letter A, list down examples of situation in each of the given communication models, Shannon-Weaver model, Schramm model, and transactional model. Letter B, write a 10-sentence paragraph in this situation. As a student, if you are to address the nation or the Filipino people in this time of pandemic, what would you tell them? You may post it on your social media account, not compulsory, and see the different reactions you will get. You may clarify points but refrain from building conflicts in the process. So you may do so if you want. You can post it in your FB account or Twitter account, but that's 10 paragraphs. But you can just attach it as file in the Google form, okay? Then letter C, exchange emails or messages with your friends regarding your ECQ experiences and how do you see and feel about it. Tell them how it affects your life. So you can just take a screenshot of your conversation in Messenger with your friends. So all of this, attach it in the Google form link. The letter B, it's your option, it's your choice, if whether you will be posting it in your social media account. But again, the same as with the three activities under what can I do, these activities under additional activities, I'll be posting the deadline will be on next meeting, okay? So that you will have enough time accomplishing the said activities. Thank you. Thank you for listening. We have already reached the end of our discussion for this week. Hopefully, you have learned a lot about the models of communication. Enjoy doing the activities, and God bless us all. Thank you.